Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Mitchell, and welcome to another edition of Dawn of Sports. I love when we have guests like this on our show. Today, we not only have a basketball reporter for Zone Coverage that covers the Timberwolves, Gopher women, Lynx, you name it. That's his night job. By day, he's a nurse. So I don't know where Andrew Dukowitz gets all of his energy, but he is fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to introducing him to you guys coming up.
Yep. Thanks to Andrew for joining us. Alex Haugen is our producer today. This is Dawn of Sports. We are coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Best way to listen to this show or any of our shows at talknorth.com. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. You know, we still have the best lineup in town. Mark Rosen, who had Marnie Gellner on this week, Randy Shaver, Kevin Gorg, John Krasinski, Roy Smalley, Lavelle Eniel III, Alec Lewis, Jeff Diamond, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, on and on and on. I can never remember all the great people we have on this show. We will feature occasionally Leah B. Olson when it's time to talk Lynx or some of the sports she covers. And we are also want to thank Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood and Minnesota Masonic Charities.
All right. Well, without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the podcast. I know it feels like you never get an off season either. Well, you don't get an off minute, I don't think, being not only a basketball reporter for all of these sports going on, but then, which is very interesting to me, being a nurse by day. Like, you must be able to be like, listen, when we play basketball, it's not that serious. I saw Sirius about 5 hours ago. Welcome to the podcast, and how are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. If Jim, he mentioned John Krasinski, if I can be the Walmart or Costco version of John Krasinski today, I feel like my job has been accomplished. But I mean, what I'll say is I have a phenomenal wife that does a lot of the homework and makes my life quite a bit easier. And then you're 100% right on. Like, covering sports is a really fun pastime. It's honestly become more of my full-time job this season, and my nursing job is more of a part-time gig. But, when you work in healthcare, you get a lot of appreciation for just, what is really serious in life. And it's nice to be able to impact the world in a day job and then be able to bring some smiles for a night job.
I just love the perspective that it must give you too. And like you said, now it's become more of a full-time job for you. So when you first started, it was a passion project. You got in on it. And I just have to tell you, I enjoy being at games and covering games that you're covering because I love your sense of humor. Obviously you get it. You're a great writer, but what is the thing that you love the most over the past couple of years that has made this basketball passion become more of your full-time job?
Yeah, I think the thing I've found the most powerful is when I started doing this, it was really just kind of like to prove that, I could do something in sports media. I never thought it would get to this point, but, it was just like, hey, I want to prove that I can write, or at least I want to give a go at it before, the opportunity is lost. And really what I've bet on with my coverage is that there's a lot of people out there like me that want to know more of the humanizing side of athletes, what Alana Smith from the Lynx is doing for her schooling, what they like to do in their pastimes, asking Jaden McDaniels if he's seen the Joe Ingles memes, things like that. And it just so happens that there's a lot of people out there that really enjoy that type of coverage. And it does help that I am kind of a basketball sicko. I watch it pretty much every day of the year, even if I wasn't being paid to watch it. And I can kind of bring that expertise of an analysis standpoint, but then couple it with just more of the humanizing, fun moments that these athletes have, which, again, it was a bet that a lot of people out there wanted to see that. And thankfully, that bet has paid off so far.
And what I really like, especially with, social media and all of this, athletes now are more willing to understand where you're coming from when you ask that kind of a question, like, oh, I get it. And they welcome it. Don't you know? You can see them, maybe that glaze. Jim and I have talked about that glaze that athletes get. You see it in their eyes when you ask a question and they're going to go into, I'm just going to give you all of the blah, blah, blah. But sometimes when you ask a question that's out of the norm that people want to hear, that perks them up, it wakes them up. Haven't you noticed that?
Yeah, I've especially noticed it with Jaden, where when he's out there for a scrum, usually when everyone gets done asking the basketball things, he gives me kind of a smile of like, okay, what do you got for me this time? Which, it's a year and a half of chatting with him and being at every practice and being, so he can kind of figure out what my angle is with my coverage. But I think the other thing I'll just reference Cheryl Reeve, who I know Jim, if I remember right, had a podcast with her as well. I don't know how he keeps track of all of these, but, she had mentioned a couple times of just like, she didn't really know how to answer these questions when I first started asking them, because no one's really ever wanted to know kind of the behind the curtain view of like what Cheryl's mentality is like. And now that, 2 full seasons of having me on the beat have concluded, she's a lot more willing to kind of shed that light on stuff, which, that's, I always say, like, it's to the athlete's benefit too. Like, there's so much cynicism in this world. There's so much kind of negativity out there. If you can show a little bit of the good side, the bright side of you to the fans, it makes them root for you that much harder, which, I'm sure some athletes don't really give a hoot what the fans think, and others, really welcome it. But I'm just glad that my kind of gamble paid off and that a lot of fans wanted this type of coverage. And, it's nice to add something to a group that already has such a like accomplished basketball like mindset with Chris Hines, Chase Frederick, Dane Moore, John, among many others. So yeah, it's been refreshing to see, that's for sure.
Well, what I find refreshing is it's your personality too, right? You're not going out of, so when people do something and it's not really them, it doesn't seem genuine. So these are questions that I think, even if you were just out at a dinner party with them, like and you weren't even in the business, I think you'd ask them these questions. And I say sometimes when I talk to athletes and they want to know, okay, can you break it down for me? And I've had athletes pull me aside, like, what are the different media looking for? Because some people come out of left field, some people are doing this. And I tried to explain to them, there's beat writers. You might have your pregame and postgame, like they have to know the different types of media that are kind of coming at them, I said, like, TV for me, I have 35 seconds. And that's for everything. I have 10 seconds to show your highlights from last night, and I need like a 25-second soundbite just for today, because it's Wednesday or something like that. If I have a 15-minute show, so when you explain to these athletes what they're looking for, not many of them have the opportunity to either have the luxury of a pre and post game show, someone trying to find out like behind the scenes stuff, or someone like you who's a writer and can dedicate the column, the time, the coverage to that. So once they realize it, and you kind of touched on it, they become more used to it and open up about it. So, but getting there sometimes is difficult, right? Kind of getting that trust, like erasing that glaze over. So now that you have broken through, is that exciting for you? Like, like, okay, that person may not be giving it to me right now, but I know I can wear them down.
My wife will tell you if there's one kind of skill I have, it's eventually wearing people's guards down until they like me. So this is just like a normal day in my life where I'm just slowly browbeating people into enjoying my company. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of exciting. I've been a Timberwolves fan and a basketball fan forever. So, like having the moments where I can talk to Mike Conley kind of specifically is someone that's, when Jason Kidd retired, he was kind of my first real favorite player, was Jason Kidd on those Nets teams. And when he retired, Mike Conley was just starting to get going on that grit and grind Grizzlies team of the kind of 20-teens years. And I really enjoyed him as a player. I mean, for a decade before I started doing anything in media. And now it's just, I get to go ask him questions about being a dad, or, what it's like sleeping on the road versus at home where you have kids around. And then, I mean, the other side of it too is I really do enjoy like the kind of almost ballet nature of a basketball game. So to be able to ask someone that I've like growing through college and in my early adulthood kind of looked at as this is a basketball savant, being able to now ask him like, you know, what are you seeing on these pick and rolls? Like, what are you seeing when you're bringing the ball up and the defenses in this set? It really is, you know, a dream come true is probably cliche, but you know, it's not somewhere when I started this media journey 5 years ago, I thought I would be kind of getting to, but now that I'm here, just enjoying every second of it, because it really is cool to get that inside kind of information, as well as see, you know, players start to understand like, okay, this guy isn't going to ask me gotcha questions. This guy isn't, if I swear on a mic, he's going to cut the clip and make a funny joke about how he's not going to get me fined. Like he's going to try and at least protect me, my wallet and kind of my public persona, while also putting out these little tidbits of information. I will say the one thing I kind of pride myself on is in my writing, I try and make it really basketball nitty gritty, you know, stats analysis. And then in my coverage, like what I capture on my phone or put out on social media, I try and really make it a point to really show these players, you know, as humans more so than just players. So again, it's been very rewarding to be able to do both. And I feel like at least some of the players have kind of figured out what I'm here for. So that helps too, as it probably does for all of us.
You know, the one person I wanted to pick your brain about, we all know so much about Anthony Edwards. We know how the team now has went back-to-back without him playing, but coming off this huge win over, and I say huge in air quotes because the Nets are not very good right now, but Julius Randle coming off a triple-double, just how he has changed in his time with the Wolves. How have you seen him change, and what is your relationship like with him? Because, you know, sometimes they come in a little guarded from where they've been, and then you see them start to open up.
Yeah, Julius, I think when he came in here, his entire career has been so focused on scoring, whether that's with LA, New Orleans, or even with New York. I mean, he was the primary option for much of his career. He gets traded here. I think, you know, he hasn't really talked a ton about it publicly, but I'm sure, you know, being the face of a New York-based franchise and then getting traded to the Midwest probably isn't a dream for a lot of people. Came in, was hurt right away, so didn't get to do training camp. And then the first half of the season, he was really just trying to figure out, you know, what being a productive NBA player is when you're not being relied on to score 35 points a game. And I think for him, that was harder than it would be for other players because he had been held to that standard for, 8-9 years of if he doesn't score 30, people are going to blast him in the papers for letting his team down and not carrying the load. Whereas with the Wolves, they didn't really need him to score 30. They needed him to make quick decisions, move the ball, play within the team, buy into the system. And if he scores 30, that's great, but he's going to get rewarded by the coaching staff, his teammates, by just being a part of the flow that Chris Finch always talks about. And, you know, he credits it to a midseason kind of injury where he stepped back. His personal trainer and him really kind of analyzed what the team needed. And he came back in and was kind of firing on all cylinders. And the rest is history. I mean, he's probably a bona fide like third team all NBA guy if he keeps this going up or keeps this pace going up for the season. What I'd say with Julius, though, is, you know, he's a very like soft spoken guy. It's really hard to hear him in the locker room, things like that. But the conversations I've gotten to have with him, a lot of times he's talking about Kobe and how, you know, at this stage in his career, he's able to look back on those earlier years, that kind of injury plagued season and the second year with the Lakers before he got traded, and look at those years of like, okay, Kobe was sacrificing a lot. He was trying to be more of a facilitator. He was trying to bring up these young guys by showing up early every day. And I think, you know, this is more of a testament of him kind of getting older and growing into a new role and modeling someone he idolized than, just this guy that is now in a system and it works for him. I think there's been a lot of like personal development on his side. The other thing I'll just share really quick, because I try to share this story a lot, is Julius Randle, when he got here last season, he decided with Skechers to adopt a classroom event, and, ended up deciding to do it here in the North Minneapolis area. Didn't get a ton of press coverage. I think like Pierre might have been there. Me and John were there, but that was about it. And I mean, he took time at that event to, talk to every kid that came through the line. He dapped up every kid that came to ask him a question or to say, to even just say like, hi. He took the time to kind of meet with them. And, I've done a lot of charity events. That's kind of like my favorite thing to do. And there are some athletes that do these charity events, and you can tell that they are on a time schedule. They want to get in and out of there, get their pictures taken and leave. And with Julius, it just seemed like it was so much more. And from that moment on, like last November, December-ish, I've just kind of been riding for him because, those are the moments where you see someone that it's like, oh, doing this work really actually does mean something for him. So much so that even after the event, someone from the Camden High School News flagged him down as he was leaving the gym with his wife and his son, and asked him if they could do like an interview for the school news station. And Julius like stopped, put everything down, like gave the kid a hug, gave a nice little like 2-3 minute interview, and then, thanked the cameraman and the student and walked off. And it's like, that's the type of guy he is. I think he genuinely is just trying to do the best he can with his life and his situation. And, when you get traded right before a season, sometimes that takes time.
Let's take care of the business. Thanks to Don and Andrew for the conversation. Again, we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios, and we do want to thank Lexus, Wayzata, and Maplewood. Thanks also to a great Minnesota company, Minnesota Masonic Charities. Back to Don.
All right. Well, before we get on to like the difference covering the women and the men, because sometimes when you're on the beat like that, you have to switch gears. I want to actually thank you. I remember when I was in college, I was working at a radio station right out of school too, but in college. So I worked at WEEI and had to do like the Celtics. And this is like the last year for like Larry Bird and, Robert Parrish. And I remember so I'm there because I'm this young girl, and I'm trying to prove that I know my stuff, right? And so like the killer, Andrew, is when your boss says, I want you to ask them what their favorite Christmas present of all time is. Because I'm like, really? Like, really? Like, I am here to talk to them about basketball. Like, I don't want to, people don't know who I am. I'm just starting my career. And I was just a production behind the scenes, but I didn't want to be labeled as fluff. Right. And so I love now that there's so many different, people want to open up, but I had to ask them what their favorite Christmas gifts were. And I remember going up to Robert Parrish, and he's the only one I remember because it was so long ago, but, and he's thinking back, and he looks at me, he goes, of all time, so I can go in the past. And I'm like, yes. And he just looked at me, and he looked down at me because he's so tall. And he goes, Dawn, my divorce papers. And I just remember everyone just kind of fell out laughing and stuff like that. And so they made it easy. But I remember I felt that pressure. I had to say, my boss is making me ask these questions. So just so I didn't come across like that. But it did break the edge. And ever since then, he would just point at me whenever he saw me or this and that. So I do like those icebreaker things. Now I don't care. People see me enough and know that I'm there. I know the sports. I cover the sports. So if I'm going to ask a fun question, it's going to be fun. But so it's different, I think, for a guy when you're breaking in. Did you feel that at all? I want them to know that I know my basketball, but I also want them to know that I'm here for other stuff.
I'll be honest. This entire time, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it without sounding like super condescending. this entire time that I've been doing this media journey, I have been, I pride myself in being a really good nurse, right? So when I've run into people that when people come at me or say something online, or like other writers are telling me to kind of like, whether it's watch your lane or hey, you don't know the sports or anything like that, from fans, writer, whoever, I've always kind of been able to take solace in like, I'm a really good husband, I'm a good dog dad, and I'm a good nurse. So like, if people don't think I'm a good like basketball mind, I can get over that pretty quickly. So I've just kind of gone in and just had fun with it. I can say I haven't really felt a ton of that like need to prove myself, because I look at my life as more of, just this is something really cool that I am fortunate enough, blessed enough, however you want to think about it, enough to be able to do. And, at every step of this journey, I've said, if this is as far as it goes, I am going to be able to check this off my bucket list and say I've been able to do it. But let's see how far we can ride this car before the gas runs out. And so far it hasn't run out, but I will say, just on a baseline level, like, it's not lost on me that as a white male in the news kind of reporting industry, a lot of things have been, easier. I think there is a certain like stigma still in this industry, which that's part of why I'm so passionate about women's sports and trying to elevate them with the same coverage that I bring to the NBA, is because, like, honestly, they deserve the same coverage. So do female reporters. So do female journalists. Like, I'll always kind of die on that horse as well, of, we should be elevating the coverage equally. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. Well, you get to a certain age, or for me, covering it so long, that I don't feel that anymore. Like, I don't feel my need to prove, even to my fellow colleagues or like beat writers, that like, I know, like, let's take Vikings, for instance. I know what a nickel defense is. I can recognize it. I know when they're doing a slant route. I know what single high. But in my 35 seconds or 2 minutes, I'm not using any of that. So I'm not asking the question because I'm not going to use it. I'm not asking the question because I don't know it, So it's like, I'm not asking that question because I'm not writing a column on it. I don't have to, talk about the breakdown on the scheme or anything like that. But yeah, if I'm at a post-game show, I recognize what happened. So, but I don't feel like I need to prove anymore. And maybe that's for male or female, whenever they're starting their career, you're right out of the chute. I mean, I wasn't even on TV way back then. I was like right out of college going, really? That's what you're giving me to ask? Like, okay. But I do love, and another reason why I'd have you on, is how you do support the women's sports. So I'm going to jump over to Lynx and also Gopher Women.
Just really quick, Don. I do want to add to, if I had started this journey when I was 21 years old, fresh out of college, I guarantee you I would have a different perspective on what people on the internet would think, or what people watching my segments on like Fox or things like that. Like, I would totally have a different perspective. I think, me doing this in my mid 30s has given me just a different outlook on, whose opinions really matter in life. The other thing I'll just say is, like, for the past 10 years being an RN, like, I've been asking people how like chemo side effects, pain, wounds, things like that affect people. So now when I'm in a locker room asking someone about like a meme, or I do ask Mike quite a bit about like the nitty gritty basketball stuff of just, what is changing in pick and rolls and things like that, just as he's gone throughout his career. It's such low stakes to me, because it's like, I've asked a lot of people questions that really, really matter. And if a fan's going to sit here and say like me asking TJ how he's enjoyed the cold is going to rub somebody the wrong way, like, I can live with that.
That's great advice. Bob LaBelle, who I interned for in college, he was a big name out back. He was like the Mark Rosen of Boston when I was in college and whatnot. He'd always say, Dawn, relax. Like, we're not brain surgeons. We're not neurosurgeons. If they operate on the table, their patient dies if they make a mistake. If we make a mistake, no one cares. So big deal. And I remember that was the perspective. So you got that reality every single day. So I really appreciate that. And I do appreciate how you're like, I'm covering the Gophers, I'm covering the Lynx, and you get their perspectives and behind the scenes. What do you enjoy coming off this Lynx season that, had a lot going on, I'm not going to lie. And the Gopher women, they are tonight as we speak. So when this podcast comes out, they would have already played their home opener against North Dakota. They're coming off I think a 25-11 overall last year. Great at home. How does covering women's basketball kind of help in your perspective?
Yeah, I kind of twofold. I would say like one of my favorite things about covering women's basketball is currently the AAU culture of men's basketball hasn't really taken a hold. So you still have the weird like quirks of players' games that are just gone in the NBA. I mean, there's not many players in the NBA that don't have a perfect jump shot or don't have a really tight handle or, run goofy. Whereas the WNBA, I mean, Courtney Williams dribbles the ball straight up. I mean, you could literally balance a rake against her back and it would never fall down because she is not hunched over or anything when she is dribbling up the court. You look at like Alyssa Thomas's jump shot, it's one-handed, bent at the elbow. There's just all of these weird things that remind you of like a different era of the NBA where you could have a really useful player that can't shoot at all, like Tony Allen, going back to those grit and grind Grizzly days. You can have players that just shoot weird, like a Bill Laimbeer from Detroit. And, it's disappeared now. So one of my favorite things covering the women's game is it's almost this like blast to the past of like, oh yeah, this is what the NBA was like before everyone was uniformed. And then covering the players. I mean, NBA players, I will say a lot of them are just normal people like everybody else. But with WNBA players, these are not multi-millionaire players. They're people that bring home a 6-figure salary and live a modest life and have hobbies and part-time jobs and, Twitch streaming like the stud buds who kind of caught fire this year. And when you are covering people that just, don't have that, like I'll phrase it this way. I have no clue what it's like to be Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, any of these like multi-hundred millionaires in the NBA. But I tell you what, I probably have a pretty good feeling of what it's like, at least from like a monetary standpoint, to be like a mid-rotation WNBA player. And, they shop at Target just like we all do. They are going, like Alana Smith is finished up her master's degree during the season. They're going for higher education. They're involved in like social justice, criminal justice, different like organizations as like an actual, this is what I want to do when I'm done with the NBA type of secondary career, because they don't build up this swath of money. They kind of have to continue working until retirement age. So it's really interesting to cover people who are not like at the peak of maybe what their life's purpose will be, but more so just like a lot of us are in their early to mid 20s navigating, that early adulthood until they get to that secondary career point that a lot of them will have to take. I think the other thing that's really charming about the WNBA is, how the WNBA is set up in season. They all live together in almost like dorm room apartments. So for the Lynx, every player, yes, including Nafisa Collier, is all living in the same apartment building. And they become incredibly close as the season goes on, because it's not like you're just putting in your 9 to 5 and then you leave. You're putting in your 9 to 5 and then you live with your coworkers.
It's like a dorm.
It's literally like a dorm. So it's covering these players, but you can just see the development of their relationships and how much they enjoy being around each other as people. They develop like inside jokes with each other that the media's usually clued in pretty well. I don't know why this season, but at some point mid-season, they all started one word answering me and then laughing and giving me a super thoughtful, direct answer. So that was fun. The first time I just about had a heart attack. Thanks, Alana Smith. But, it's just a lot of fun covering them because you just get to be a part of this like really close sisterhood, family type atmosphere, which, I mean, to be honest, they don't have that in the NBA. Everybody kind of treats it like it's their job and they go home.
Well, Andrew, I could talk to you all day long, but for people who are listening to us, where can they find your stories to read them, whether it's on social media or anywhere? Where can they find you?
Yeah, all of my written work is out on Zone Coverage. I actually have a piece coming out later today, Monday, so it'll be up by the time this pod is posted, breaking down what a broken nose is. If you've ever wondered what reading an encyclopedia of medical stuff and then having it translated for you, that's my piece on Dante. I did one on Ant's hamstring the other day. I try to at least do some funny, quirky, let's explain what a rhino rocket is type of education for people. Professional lives bleed over, right? That's all at Zone Coverage. Normally my articles are on Tuesdays and Saturdays. They come out. And then social media, I'm pretty easy to follow. My handle is ADukeMN across all platforms. And I am doing a post-game Wolves live stream, just like I did with the Lynx this year, that is on YouTube and X, called The Missing Wolves. You can find it under the Missing Minnesota handle. And Kyle Teige, Wolves personality, is going to be joining me tomorrow after the Knicks game. So you can always tune into those too. They're a blast.
Oh, they certainly are. Oh, Andrew, thank you so much. So much. I'm so excited that we got to chat today. We'll have you on again. You're fantastic. So thanks for joining us.
My snort laugh just now aside, it's still wild that someone who has interviewed Randy Moss and Adrian Peterson is going like, yeah, we'd love to have you on, Andrew. So thank you for this opportunity. Anytime you guys want a guest, I'm always more than happy. And for, the Fox 9 crew, especially, all of the great opportunities you all have given me. Thank you to that as well. And Talk North as well. You guys are awesome. So appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks so much.